Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. I'm your host, Nick, and today we're talking about a range of topics, starting with what's happening in Texas and the gerrymandering with Republicans, what's happening in California with Gavin Newsom and the Election Rigging Response Act, and what's happening right here in New York City with Zohran Mamdani and the general election. So much to discuss, so let's jump into it. Okay, so first off, Texas Republicans gerrymandering. Surprise, surprise. Now, that's not to say that Republicans are the only one gerrymandering, because we know Democrats do it too. But when you look at the data between all the states, there is a majority and an overwhelming trend that shows there is more extreme gerrymandering in Republican-led states, such as South Carolina, Missouri, right? The list goes on. So we know what the practice is, but for those who don't, let's throw up some graphics. So with that said, first let's explain what gerrymandering is. So gerrymandering is the practice where when congressional seats or any seat for any office in government are drawn, the status quo, you're supposed to have an even representation across party lines, right? So if a district has, let's say, 60% of Democrats and 40% Republican, well, the seats that are drawn on the map should reflect 60% Democrats and 40% Republican. But we know that doesn't always happen. When did this start? This actually started in the 1800s thanks to a man called Elbridge Gerry. He was actually the governor of Massachusetts who at the time approved maps and fought for maps that would guarantee a majority, a stronghold, for the Democratic-Republican Party in the state Senate of Massachusetts. Now, at that time, there was the Federalist Party and the Democratic-Republican Party, and he was a member of the Democratic-Republican Party, and he pushed for, a lot of extra representation for the Democratic-Republicans. With that said, Elbridge Gerry, the way the map was drawn also kind of looked like this weird lizard thing, which is basically a salamander. So when you get the salamander shaped of the district, plus Elbridge Gerry, Gerry being his last name, put two together, and then bam, that's how we get gerrymandering. So back to the representation issue. If we know that there's a certain percentage of Democrats or Republicans in modern times in a certain district or area, then the districts that are drawn should reflect that. So if we were to gerrymander, not saying we should, but if we were to, you may see typically 60% Democrats and 40% Republicans, but the way the map is drawn, it will then go over key areas that will loop in your favored party. So at the end of the day, let's say you need 5 seats, and let's say, with a 60-40 split, you should have 3 that are orange and 2 that are purple. That would allow for equal representation. But if they're gerrymandered, then you may see 0 Democratic or orange seats, or you may see a higher majority, such as 3 purple or 3 Republican seats. Now, that's not fair to those in the district who make up a larger population size, and also they're not being heard because it dilutes their power, especially when it comes to their vote, and it does become a serious issue. Now, of course, we're talking about it in terms of voting, right? When you go into the voting booth and like who's your representative, and if you are a registered Democrat and you want a Democratic representation, well, your chances are very slim because there's a Republican stronghold thanks to gerrymandering. Now, it goes on much more than that, because when you think about it, how are these maps even created? Well, they're based on population size, not necessarily who's Democratic or Republican, but what's also taken into account is how many people are within each district. For Congress, there's roughly about 700,000 residents within a given district. A few 100,000 less, few 100,000 more, depending on the size. Or if it's like a state like Delaware or Wyoming, who have so few people, they get 1 representative and they might not even have 700,000 residents to begin with. But regardless, right? Not only do we have to count the populations within those areas, in this case, different states, but it also depends on who gets counted. Because put it this way, We know this is determined by our census, right? Every 10 years, the United States has a census, and the census is tracking data based on residents, the population size, and this is how we're able to allocate resources. So why does it matter? Well, residents is anyone who is living in the United States. So, hence why when you have folks that are undocumented or incarcerated or just your friends and family and your neighbors, all of us get counted in the census, which then determine the population size within each district and how those maps are drawn. It all comes full circle. And that's why it's so important that these maps are drawn accurately. So while it's good that, we are thinking about how resources should be allocated, what's not good is that now we're seeing that representation is either being diluted or it's being consolidated. And that's not necessarily good for democracy. Now, again, Republicans and Democrats both gerrymander. Republicans do it way more than Democrats. So, to counter this move that Texas is doing, look at what's happening in California. California Governor Gavin Newsom has already thrown down the gauntlet, and he is saying Democrats are going to fight back. So this is actually a great move because we know in our current state of politics, there have been very few moments where Democrats have been able to push back, fight back, or resist, let's say, against the Trump administration in the second term in the White House. And because Trump is even, let's say, more powerful than his first term, really testing the limits of his presidential authority, it's giving a lot of people pause and worry. And this is one moment where Democrats can actually counter that. So what Gavin Newsom has done, he has said, if Donald Trump is going to go after Texas and trying to find 5 more seats to give them a boost in the House of Representatives, then we are going to counter that with 5 seats of our own. So we will have more Democratic seats than what's currently in the makeup of the House of Representatives. Now, for those who don't know, there are 435 seats in Congress, the House of Representatives. So as of now, I believe there's, 218 would give you the majority, 435 divided by 2. But based on how many Democrats and Republicans are in office, there's roughly like 221 Republicans and like 213 Democrats. Some Democrats are still haven't been voted in through special elections because some of them have passed away. So with all that said, we definitely need some Democratic seats. But regardless, with that said, we need to have Governor Newsom throw down the gauntlet and show Trump that we are not backing down, because if he's going to create this power play and change the map, and not only that, but then give his party more resources to allocate, right? That is just so unfair to the American people, no matter what state you're in. I'll give you an example. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had her town hall in the district only a few months ago, I was very fortunate to be present there as a constituent. And she had shared with us that thanks to the big, beautiful bill that was being passed, we already saw that we were having resources taken away. Millions of dollars has been taken away from New York 14, specifically for FEMA response effort. Okay, so FEMA, right? This agency is responsible basically for rehabilitating and getting the funds to any district or area or state in the country that goes through a natural disaster. So if there is a tornado where you live, if there are hurricanes where you live, if there is like tons of wildfires where you live, right? All of these things impact where you live, and FEMA is responsible by getting federal funds to your community to help rehabilitate whatever you may have lost or damaged in those natural disasters. So the fact that because of the Republican majority, we were taken away millions of dollars of natural disaster response funding, that is just so gross, deplorable, and just smarmy. This is not okay. So now the next time there's a natural disaster right here in New York 14, flooding specifically, that actually costs a lot of people their homes and some of them their lives. So the fact that next time that happens and there are lives on the line, we will literally have Republicans to thank, because they are the ones who crafted the bill and voted for the bill. So it is literally Republicans taking money, even from New York 14, for whatever tax breaks they wanted to give to the wealthy, and essentially screw over everyone else. Okay, so like it's not just petty squabbles online anymore. This is life or death, where they are using our money to protect us from natural disasters to pay for tax breaks for the billionaires. How crazy is that? So this is why this fight for gerrymandering is so important, because it really does come down to people's lives. So the fact that Gavin Newsom is saying we are going to respond in kind, that is amazing. So we need to pick up these 5 congressional seats through the trifecta in California. In California, they have a majority in their state house and in their state senate, plus with a Democratic governor. They will now be actually having a special election. They have already crafted the Election Rigging Response Act, which will now be up to the voters on November 4th, 2025. If you are in California, you will have the opportunity to vote on this new congressional map, which will pick up 5 seats for Democrats. Now, whether you approve of gerrymandering or not, just realize this is to counter the response that's happening in Texas, and the whole fact that Trump is looking to keep House control under the Republican Party. So we know what Republicans are doing right now. They're giving Trump presidential authority to run rampant. And if you're not happy with anything that's been going on in the past 7-8 months, then I would strongly recommend you get to the polls on November 4th and vote yes for the Election Rigging Response Act that Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California are putting on the ballot. I think it's great that voters have the chance to decide, and I get that some people will not like gerrymandered districts. That's totally fair. But just realize that it is coming down to life or death these days, and it's not just politics as usual. So really consider how we can actually build power with those Democratic seats, and how we can actually help our communities when we're trying to, really think about those resources, how we allocate them to people in our lives and people around you. So again, November 4th, 2025, if you are a resident, if you are registered to vote in California, then please, please, please vote for the Election Rigging Response Act. Okay, so a lot going on there. Now, stemming off of that, we also know that deep blue state of New York, which isn't really that deep blue anymore because we know we have some big Republican strongholds here. But that said, we do know in a blue state like New York, who also has a majority in the state assembly, the state senate, and her Democratic governor, Kathy Hochul. She has signaled to the base that she will potentially be redrawing the maps here in New York as well. Now, for those who don't know, we had a horrible process a few years ago after the 2020 census, where we managed to save, I think, 2 out of 3 congressional seats, which is good. I wish we saved that third, but I do have to hand it to the organizers on the ground who were able to save 2 of them, because that was just phenomenal, like Herculean effort. So just the fact they got it done was just really, really above and beyond amazing as it is. But as a result, we had our redistricting process, which, long story short, our state assembly, I believe, our state senate, I forget who it was, but they basically redrew the maps that did favor Democrats, because let's be real, we have a Democratic majority population here in the state of New York. I think we outnumber Republicans 5-1, something like that. It's a pretty fairly sized outnumbering there. But point being is, a Republican had then sued because they felt that they were unfair, but they filed the lawsuit in a Republican district where the judge was conservative friendly. And because of that, they struck down the maps. So then the state assembly was tasked to then give those maps over to an independent commission. And the independent redistricting commission then had to basically divvy up the map so it was fairer, aka leaned more toward Republican. Now, we already have a huge majority of Democrats in the state of New York, so making it fairer for Republican is giving them an advantage. Just based on the numbers, it's basically not very probable that Republicans would ever really win these seats because, again, numbers-based, Democrats are outnumbering Republicans. So because of that, because Democrats had their maps sued and lost, and we had to have these new maps, right? long story short, this then screwed a lot of our state assembly races, our congressional races, right? If anyone remembers the big race in Manhattan where Jerry Nadler went against Carolyn Maloney, they were both senior Democrats, and even though they were more moderate leaning, right? Some could say Maloney progressive, but like, let's be real, they were both of a different generation, both of an older generation. So they weren't exactly on the front lines of the top issues of the day. But with that said, right, like having two Democrats in leadership from New York was so valuable. I will say that. But now they had to compete against each other. Maloney eventually lost because she was calling out Nadler for being too old. Pot me kettle. Long story short, she lost. Jerry Nadler won, and then there was like one less House leadership Democrat in the party. So it's not good how it worked out. But again, it all stemmed from 2020 to the redistricting map, and then getting sued, and then having to change the map, and then they try to make it fairer. So like, this is a big deal. So the fact that now this could really mess up our representation, who is fighting for us, like here we are. Kathy Hochul is saying that she is considering redrawing the maps for New York. Now, as great as that sounds, this actually gives me pause. It's not to say that I think they shouldn't be gerrymandered, because I think we do need to pick up seats in New York because we already got screwed last time. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that Zohran Mamdani is on his way to become mayor of New York City. He's going to win this general election. The polls are in his favor, and the attacks from Eric Adams and former Governor Cuomo are just so soft. They're just so weird. Like, they're just playing into like more social, like attention grabby, like New York Post kind of drama, which like that doesn't really like move the needle when like you have like New York Post thinks they could take down Obama, but like never gonna happen. They think they could take down Zohran, not gonna happen. So my point here is like, why is this good or bad for Zohran, right? We know that folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Zohran Mamdani, two Democratic socialists, right? They are leaders of the progressive movement, right? With the content and the message and what they're putting out there in the world. We know that they have a lot of sway and power in the Democratic Party, let alone the electorate. Now, that is to say, where do they come from? They come from deep blue districts. I can tell you right now, here in Astoria, right? It is the People's Republic of Astoria, because every level of government is represented by a Democratic Socialist. At City Council, we have Tiffany Caban. At State Assembly, it's Zohran Mamdani as State Assembly member until he wins mayor. Then we have State Senate, Kristen Gonzalez. And then even for Congress, we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. All Democratic Socialists. So that being said, we are so fortunate to be living in this pocket of Western Queens. So with that said, we know that if these deep blue districts are what's powering the movement on the left, right, then we need more districts like this. And that's where I get worried about this new redistricting, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty damn sure that Governor Hochul will make sure that there are not more deep blue districts, but like purplish, centrist, moderate blue districts. You know what I'm saying? So like, she'd rather have more like Richie Torres type of districts, representatives like him, versus more representatives like AOC. So we know that if there's a huge population of Republicans upstate, right? If you start slicing and carving those districts, you're not going to get more deep blue ones. They're going to make sure they're more like light blue, purple-ish, with like centrists and moderates who could run for those seats. So as much as it's great to have more blue seats, more Democratic seats, we know that our Democratic Party leadership is not going to let that happen. They're not going to get more progressive seats. So we, as organizers, activists, voters, we need to be demanding that, like, hey, Democrats outnumber Republicans so much in this state, we need to be having deeper, bluer districts. Because not only does that mean that we'll have fairer representation to really reflect the electorate, but it's also about the resources stemming all the way back. If you really make it about the resources, right? We know that the left is focused on really trying to support the working class, people of color, progressive folks in the electorate here in the state of New York, right? That is where the fight has always been. especially union power, right? So if we were to create a cross-class coalition, right, taking that on, saying, hey, we know that the Democratic Party is a big tent party, but if we're trying to help the lowest common denominator, meaning people who are really struggling and really need the extra help, and we know right here in New York City, inflation is hitting the city the hardest out of all the cities in the country. So it would make a lot of sense to get more deep blue districts and representation to impact and help us, right? Because we know if we can power the progressive movement because we can fight for more representation, then not only can we really deliver on affordability, not only through new congressional seats, but also at the local level. But at the end, this would essentially power the rest of the country. We see already how Zohran's victory in the primary is really transforming how people are thinking about the electorate, about messaging, even social media, right? So say what you will about those good videos, but like this is really changing the game. So this is so important. We get everyone on board to be fighting for deep blue districts, fighting for more, I don't want to say gerrymandering, but like we need more blue seats, right? So like if Republicans are going to play dirty, Democrats have to fight back and say, hey, we are not going to allow you to like disrespect us like that. We're not going to allow you to take resources out of our constituents, livelihoods, their hands, their mouths, whatever you want to call it. Like it's just not okay for this like really gross power grab. So end of the day, Democrats need to do whatever they need to do because it is really life or death. All right, last but not least, I did want to touch on Kamala Harris, who did actually pop up on my Instagram feed today. Now, granted, today at the time of this recording is August 18th, the same day that the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. For those who don't know, the 19th Amendment gave women, mostly white women, the right to vote. So with that said, Kamala Harris actually did talk to Latino leaders, specifically from Texas. Now, we know that she is very much aware of what the Democratic Party is doing in Texas, right? We know that Texas Democrats had actually fled the state to Illinois. Why Illinois? Because Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is a billionaire, now he is one of the Ken Martin thinks is a good one. I still think all billionaires should not exist. The point being is that because he has unlimited funds, he could easily help fund Texas Democrats' trip to Illinois because they actually get charged per diem when they're not in session. So the fact that they fled the state to prevent a quorum, so that way Texas Republicans couldn't pass the new maps, this then allowed them to buy time. J.B. Pritzker of Illinois is buying their hotel rooms and other resources and things they need to kind of just do what they got to do to stop the Republicans. So very shrewd. I love it. It's clever. And as much as I don't like billionaire money, I am glad that at least Texas Democrats are able to fight back because again, this is something it's life or death. It really is taking money out of people's livelihoods and it's not okay. So I'm glad that they're fighting back hard. With that said, right, Kamala Harris, she knows what's going on. She wanted to talk to Latino leaders and the video was there. I didn't really love the setup, right? It was this disjointed zigzag of tables outside. It looked like a hotel, but it was also kind of be businessy because everyone was dressed nice and Harris had a really nice pink suit on, looking fresh, looking young. That's great. Kamala Harris looks good, but the fact that she knows she's trying to keep a youthful appearance, right? That bright pink looks good for her. I'll commend her on that. But at the end of the day, right? What did she really have to say? It was another mumbo jumbo world salad of just she supports what the Texas Democrats are doing. She's saying what they're doing is courageous. It's yeah, that's great, but that's not nothing new or nothing anyone could have said. Was that your discussion with the Latino leaders just to say what they're doing is courageous? They cut the video too short, and it would have been great to have more a roundtable discussion where they could ask her questions. But it was just this, I don't know, a short clip of just someone asking her a question. You don't even see Harris in the frame. And then she does answer and it's that's it. So yeah, she's running for 2028 because she said on Colbert, she didn't really admit that she was going to run, but it's if your whole point of not announcing you're running is to not be transactional so you can talk about your book, then why you're talking Latino leaders, not about your book, right? But about what's happening in Texas and Texas Democrats, it's yep, you're very much running. we get it. You're not fooling anyone. But yeah, I'm just disappointed because like it's what is okay. So 2028, like tangent here, like 2028 again. It's gonna come down to who any candidate has pissed off the least, right? Like Harris has her baggage, Newsom has his baggage, AOC, if she runs for president, has her baggage. Unless she runs for, I think she might run for New York Senate, so that's fine too. But all right, I guess between the other, like even Buttigieg, he's making the rounds, like a lot of baggage. So I guess that being said, it's like who do we not like the least? That's who's going to be our primary nominee. Unless there's a really good primary where there's some good like debate moments and there's some good policy plans and like some good Project 2028 stuff, like. But point being is, you know, Harris is coming off as just making everyone happy. If she can make you feel good and inspire hope, that is her strategy because she's not in office, so she has no policy to run on. Her record in the White House wasn't that great. Let's be real. If you're telling people don't come here and then you lose on immigration thanks to the cats and dogs guy, like, come on. I'm sorry, but that's just not good. Objectively not good. And like, you know, even with Kim Davis in the same-sex marriage fight, right? Like she was the Attorney General of California who demanded that they restart after Prop 8 was thrown down to restart issuing marriage licenses. So like she has that to run on and comment on, but she's been quiet on that. I don't know why. But I'm like, okay, like you don't have to speak about everything, but just something. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with this like tepid, lukewarm kind of like peekaboo strategy Harris has going on. Like I know she means well, but it's like this is just not like for me. Like I need more. I need someone who's going to throw down, someone who's going to fight back, someone who's going to definitely like, you know, like fight for progressive policy. Like she did have some progressive wins, I think, but like it's just she's not leaning into it. She's staying in that moderate lane. I'm just like no. I mean it's maybe it's center left, but like it's like too close to the center than the left. Put it that way. All right. Enough on that. End of the day, I really hope that Democrats do win on this gerrymandering fight, whatever you want to call it, because Democrats need more seats in the House. I'm telling you right now, Democrats are not going to win overwhelmingly in the 2026 midterms. The way leadership is not reading the room, they were already set up for failure. Leadership's already... no, thank you. But then to be fair, a lot of the leftist activists, folks online, some people who aren't even really political, but just, you know, letting any little bit of anger run rampant, which is free speech, they're allowed to. But my problem with that is like when some of these anger issues just like bubble out, it just dampens the enthusiasm and it tears down the party. And like, yes, you can be held people accountable and hold critique, but when it's not done with precision and it's not done with discipline, it's not done with focus, right? You really got a lot of people who are not in politics that are just kind of like grasping the surface. And those people see those posts because we know the algorithms feed based on rage and engagement, right? The anger of the post, typically those are the ones that make into people's feeds. So if all people are seeing are being like yelling about this candidate or that candidate, like granted, some points definitely valid, some points, just people just having a bad day. But that's what's going to be the ultimate result of all these videos and TikToks and comments and things going around. So the left may not actually win. We are putting out the bad energy out there, feeding that to the larger electorate, people who actually see and read this stuff. And then they're going to be like, well, if they're not that great, they're not going to fight for it because they did all this little thing. And then, you know, I could either sit this one out, maybe take a gamble on Trump, or unless there's other influencers and people out there really trying to make the case saying, you know what, they need to do better on these issues, but I'm still going to vote for this Democrat because we know we need to get the other guy out. And I know vote blue no matter who is a thing. That's not what I'm advocating for. And like people in the deep blue states, you could probably sit this one out, right? Because you know your vote's not going to matter. But the people in the swing states, right? In the 7 swing states where Kamala Harris lost, she only lost by roughly 100,000 votes in each state, right? Which, hey, if you think about it, So you got a bunch of influencers with millions of followers and, only a couple 100,000 in each state probably saw those videos. You do the math. So all I'm saying is I think the left needs a more disciplined message, more cohesive message. And it's one thing to hold accountable and be angry, but it's another to have a more focused or robust approach that doesn't allow for people to slip through the cracks and really just be so dismissive of the candidates out there. Because no candidate is actually announced for 2028, but just the fact that there's all this bad energy out there, I'm like, we did it to ourselves. We're not, because there's going to be no one that people want. Like, oh, we could have chose this one, but there's too many bad things, like the checklist. And that's where the purity test comes in. We don't want purity test, but it's one thing to have consistent values. But like, if it came down to Democratic people's baggage versus Republican people's baggage, like Trump, definitely not picking that one. So I hope you do too. All right. But with all of that said, I hope you like what you heard and want to learn more. So please subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or if you want to follow along on Instagram, then make sure to follow at NSFD_pod. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, democracy is not suitable without you.